In this video, we will cover the rules of overriding. How do we override a method in child which is defined in the parent class? What are the rules? What is allowed? What is not allowed? And when we are overriding a method, what can be changed? So for example, here we have the parent class which has a log method, and in the child class we are overriding the log method. So we didn't change anything in the method signature. For example, the name of the method, which must be same, of course, the return type, the access modifier, we only changed the implementation. So that is perfectly fine. But what else can be changed and what cannot be changed? So for overriding, thing that cannot be changed is the method signature. It means the name of the method and the number of arguments. So this cannot be changed at any cost. If we do something like this, if we add a new argument, so the method signature is no longer the same, because method signature is basically the combination of method name plus arguments, including their order. All right. So in this case, because we added a new parameter in the method definition, so this is not a valid override anymore. It is a valid overload, but it is not overriding. So signature must be same. We cannot change the signature. What else cannot be changed? So for example, return type cannot be changed. So we cannot say something like int. Now this is a problem. This is not a valid overriding, and this is not a valid overload as well, because in order to overload a method, signature must be different. But in this case, signature is same. We are just changing the return type, which is not allowed. So this will be a compile time error. So return type must be same. The only thing that is allowed in the return type is the covariant return. What is the covariant return? So for example, we have uh, an inheritance hierarchy in the form of message sender that we defined earlier. So we have message sender class, then we have uh, video message sender, which is extending, for example, the message sender. So consider this hierarchy, and now let's say that the parents log method returns the message sender. Simply add a null value to satisfy the compiler. Let's say this is the implementation in the parent class. Now, in the child class, when we are overriding the method, we can do two things. The first is to match the return type as it is, which is allowed. Second is the covariant return, means in the child class, in the overridden method, we can return any type which is extending the type that is defined in the parents method. So if the parents method has defined the message sender as return type, so in the child class, we can either define the message sender or any type that is extending the message sender. So for example, in the child class, if we change the return type to video message sender, this is allowed because video message sender extends the message sender. So that is the covariant return. The third thing is access modifier. So we cannot use an access modifier that is more restrictive. So for example, public has all the visibility. So we cannot change it to private in the child class. This is it will be a compile time error. But if we have an access modifier, for example, protected, in that case, we can write the access modifier in the child class protected or any access modifier that is less restrictive. So we know that public is less restrictive than protected. So we can write public access modifier in the overridden method. So we covered three things till now: access modifier, return type, and the signature. What else? The other category is basically the exceptions that a message can throw. So the child in the child class, the overridden method can throw any runtime exception. So in the method definition, we can declare any runtime exception. So we see the parents log method is not declaring to throw any runtime exception, but when we are overriding the method in child, we are saying that it will or it can throw a runtime exception that is allowed. There are no restrictions related to the runtime exception, so the overridden method can throw any number of runtime exception, any type of runtime exception. So instead of runtime, for example, we can change it to another runtime exception, null pointer exception. This is allowed. But when it comes to the checked exception, then there are certain restrictions. So for example, if we say that this method can throw file not found exception, which is basically a checked exception, then in the child class, it is fine if we don't throw anything. So you see there are no problems over here in the child class. But as soon as we decide to throw something, there are certain conditions. So for example, we can throw the exact exception that is allowed, but we cannot throw any new checked exception. This is not allowed. Here we are saying that the child version may throw a new checked exception that is IO exception, but compiler says that okay, this was not declared in the parents version of log, so this is not allowed. So we cannot throw any new checked exception, but we can only throw the same exception, same checked exception that was declared in the parent method. Let's change this checked exception to some other exception. For example, let's say now the parents method is throwing the IO exception, not exactly throwing, but it is declaring that this method can throw the IO exception. In that case, in the child class, we can either declare the throw exception with the throws clause or any subclass of this checked exception. So file not found exception. If we go to the file not found exception, we see that it extends the IO exception. So in the child class, we can throw any checked exception that is the subclass of the checked exception defined in the parents version of the method. So that is allowed. So these are certain conditions related to the overriding of a method that we need to remember. If we follow these conditions, then it will make sure that we are overriding a certain method, not, for example, overloading by mistake. All right, so that covers, I think, most of the things related to inheritance. That's it for now. Thank you.